You'll be surprised at what happened when I challenged Julio Rivera on the crimes of corporations. Check it out and subscribe to watch more conservatives squirm. Purdue Pharma is talking about declaring bankruptcy. Why? Because, you know, they don't want to be responsible for killing millions or hundreds of thousands of Americans and the costs associated with that after their executives took literally billions of dollars out of the company. I mean, this is just absolutely nuts. After this piece from Common Dreams, after spending hundreds of millions of dollars convincing the American public that their painkillers are safe for chronic pain, the drug maker Purdue Pharma is going to file for bankruptcy. One of the people who is suing, Martha Healy of Massachusetts, said Purdue Pharma and its executive built a multi-billion-dollar business based on deception and addiction. The more drugs they sold, the more money they made, and the more people in Massachusetts suffered and died. Same thing happening with PG&E, excuse me, which apparently was responsible for the Paradise Fire that killed, what, 78 people, as I recall? And they're looking at bankruptcy as a way for their executives and their company to avoid responsibility. So is it time to end corporate bankruptcies that are the result of crimes like Purdue addicting America and PG&E neglecting the maintenance of their high tension lines for years and years in order to jack profits and pay their dividends to their stockholders and huge salaries to their senior executives? And instead of allowing them to simply declare bankruptcy and walk away, and we saw the same thing with the banksters in 2008, is it time to start prosecuting these corporate criminals who have already made off with billions? In fact, is it time to claw it back? On the line with us is Julio Rivera, the editorial director of Reactionary Times, a columnist with Newsmax, American Thinker, and townhall.com, reactionarytimes.com. You can tweet him at, oh yeah, it's Julio. Julio, welcome back. Julio? I've got him on the phone. I'm not hearing him.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. I think maybe your phone's muted.
No, I was going to say, listen, thank you for having me, but I agree with you on this issue. If you can find a direct line where there was a crime committed, and in terms of these opioid-producing pharmaceutical companies, the one thing is I'd like to know what their intent was as they marketed these drugs out.
It was to make money.
For doctors, for you. It was to make money. I understand that. But did they know? If they knew, if you can subpoena their records, their internal communications, whether or not these people were fully aware of how addictive these drugs were, and if they orchestrated that, absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. They brought, Julio, you're right. And what happened, they rolled out OxyContin in 2000. They made $45 million in sales that year. By the end of that year, they were already getting reports from the field, from physicians, of people being addicted in as little as a week to their drug, which they were saying was, less addictive than any other painkiller. By 2010, this company on this drug, just the OxyContin drug, was bringing into the company $3.1 billion. And that was 10 years after they had been warned by doctors that this was causing widespread addiction. So here, I guess the question then, if we're in agreement, Julio, which is, a rare thing, but it's nice to hear, is the party that you're friends with, the Republican Party, seems to be relatively fine with this. In fact, during the 2 years that the Republicans controlled Congress and Donald Trump was president, they actively blocked a series of attempts to hold Purdue Pharma accountable and to hold hearings on this. And they're big advocates of these bankruptcy laws. They say that and this has been going back to Reagan, basically, Ralph Nader was the one who championed this stuff back in the 60s and 70s, which is what led to Lewis Powell's famous 1971 memo, literally identifying Ralph Nader. He's holding us accountable, corporate America, and we've got to do something about this. We need to build out a think tank infrastructure. We need to take control of the courts.
Yeah.
We need, blah, blah, blah. You know the whole story. And why is it that the Republicans avoid this like the plague? Because these are not the only two companies.
We have to have corporate bankruptcy. Not everybody's out there committing a crime or intentionally defrauding the American people. Sometimes things don't go right in business, and then companies have to restructure.
I agree.
And they do have to file bankruptcy.
I agree.
If depending on how they file the bankruptcy, if this is a criminal matter where they can prove that sort of criminal intent, you know, that's a conspiracy at that point. And then, yeah, that's different. The damages will be handled completely different. There'll be restitution. People will go to jail, and it'll never happen again in our country. But for, you know, for a regular corporation that isn't intending to, you know, lead directly to the cause of, you know, 72,000 people dying of overdoses over the last few years because of this opioid crisis. You know, I mean, if they're not doing anything criminally malicious, they should have the right for corporate bankruptcy. I don't understand is your argument against blanket corporate bankruptcy?
No,
that's a
my argument is against white collar executive immunity. I'm suggesting that, you know, if the company goes bankrupt or not, there should be a way to compensate the victims. And I think clawing back some of the, I mean, literally the Sackler family took billions of dollars out of this company.
In the medical industry that makes these pharmaceutical companies more liable in these matters and not be able to be protected by bankruptcy. I don't have a problem with that type of legislation being written.
Great.
No, not at all.
I am glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that. So let's apply that logic to another industry, for example. We know that there's another industry in the United States that is causing at least 10,000 deaths a year and hundreds of thousands of cases of asthma. And that's the fossil fuel industry. They're promoting fossil fuels. I'm dead serious.
Tom.
We know this. You know, car exhaust is killing 10,000 people a year because
we have an EPA,
mostly through lung cancer.
We have an EPA. People are getting fined and sanctioned all the time. There's restrictions on what we can do. You know, from the perspective. Yes, there is.
You didn't let me finish my sentence, Julio. You don't know where I'm going with this.
Okay, all right, keep going.
You know, so you've got this industry that is killing people, and you know, they acknowledge it, we acknowledge it, the science acknowledges it, it's all out there, and there are alternatives to this, right? I mean, you know, we could be building.
Yeah, but there's not alternatives that don't, in their initiation, require fossil fuels.
Well, let me finish my sentence. There are alternatives out there, and they are
fossil fuels.
There are all. I drive a plug-in hybrid, maybe once a month. If Louise and I take a long enough trip, my car kicks over into gasoline mode. The rest of the time, I'm driving on electricity, and it's created by Bonneville Dam. I'm literally carbon free, and that could be true of that could be true of everybody in Portland. But these companies are not only promoting propaganda that this is silly and there's no problem there, and supporting the whole social media thing of blocking Teslas, but they're also lying to us about the consequences of their product. Shouldn't they be held as accountable as the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma?
No, it's absolutely completely different. It's a necessary thing that we need. The numbers don't justify what you're trying to say. You said that it leads to the death of 10,000 people. That's negligible, and I don't even know directly in what way do they contribute to the death of 10,000.
That's the estimate, that about 10,000 people a year are dying from specifically, this is, you know, Harvard University, specifically from cancers and lung diseases caused by inhaling the particulate matter that comes out of diesel and gasoline exhaust.
Listen,
and that's probably a very low number.
From your body from pollen, you can develop cancer.
I don't think pollen will do it. I don't think pollen will do it. But why would you defend the fossil fuel industry when they lie, and we know that they're lying, and they lobby aggressively to keep their product up there when they don't want, you know, competing products out there? Why would you defend them when you're not willing to defend Purdue Pharma?
Listen, fossil fuels are needed to create all those other industries. You're going to need all of that.
Opioids are needed to deal with pain. But what we're talking about, you know, I think that OxyContin should be on the market.
A big,
hang on just a second.
18-wheeler that runs off of electricity. Good luck.
Actually, it's entirely possible, and Tesla has already, you know, made test vehicles to show that it's possible. But
not right this second.
If we agree,
I think we've got a little more than 12 years before the world ends, Tom. I mean, I think you guys have to stop with
hang on just a second, Julio. If you and I are agreeing that that OxyContin should be on the market, that there are people who are in tractable pain, and sometimes narcotics are the only thing that can deal with it, it should be on the market.
It's just at the end of life. At the end of life, if you're dying, you're terminal, and you just need that humanitarian just relief of pain, yes.
Okay, so we're agreeing.
Giving it out like candy.
OxyContin should be on the market, but a company that lies about it and inappropriately promotes it should be held accountable, and including its executives on a criminal basis. And we agree that fossil fuels are necessary. I'm not saying fossil fuels should be done away with tomorrow morning. You know, we make plastics out of them, we make medications out of them.
I think you're trying to apply the same argument to two things that are just completely different, Tom. So no.
How are they different?
Because we need fossil fuels for basic survival. You know, we actually literally do. I mean, think about it. If right now it's 10 below zero. where I'm at right now.
Right.
If we didn't have fossil fuels keeping my house warm, I'd probably be dead, Tom. So it's a completely different argument. And you need one to create the other.
But if you lived in Germany, Julio, where
we're going to need fossil fuels.
No, Julio, if you lived in Germany right now, where they did the 100,000 rooftops, which turned into tens of millions of rooftops of solar panels, they generated so much solar electricity now that they had to stop the program to rebuild their grid, a smart grid that could redistribute that electricity. Your home could be being heated by the electricity that the solar panels had captured.
Sure, it could be. A lot of things could be, but that's not practical. You can't snap your fingers and turn America into that overnight.
How did Germany do it?
Practical.
They did it through a big government program. They backstopped the banks.
Just like you told me last week when I brought up Venezuela, I don't care about Germany. We're talking about America and what we're dealing with here in our
country. So what's so stupid about America? Why? I think it's the fossil fuel industry owning politicians and preventing actual change.
Well, I mean, I don't think that the change that you're looking for is necessarily practical. I mean, I looked at some of these things in this green bill and some of these lofty goals are just financially, like economically, we can't sustain that you know, we can't move that.
Is it that we're too stupid?
We could do it progressively, don't get me wrong, but why are we going to spend ourselves into debt trying to figure out all these new things when we have
because it'll put millions of people to work. Because it'll rebuild our economy.
Because of fossil fuels in part.
Because it'll put millions of people to work and it'll rebuild our economy. I don't see what's wrong with that.
Well, I'm not saying that we shouldn't explore more. We should explore more. But I mean, I don't think it could be. You know, this is basically we've gone off of the original argument here.
No, this is the argument. Is it time to hold corporate America accountable?
Well, listen, I'll tell you this much. Anybody who's a criminal in this country should be held accountable. So whether it's opioid, producers, pharmaceutical companies sitting here and lying in the way that they're presenting their new drugs they're creating and inventing, if they lie to people and they know how dangerous it really is.
So if a fossil fuel company like Koch Industries or ExxonMobil lies to people about climate change, then you think they should go to jail?
There is no man-made climate change. The climate's been changing for billions of years.